Hi, and welcome back to Grassroots Crypto, where I like to teach people about crypto. In this video, we're going to be talking about order books. Order books is a new planned feature within THORChain and one of the topics that I wanted to cover. Order books was proposed some time ago, and the implementation or the design on how it's going to get done has changed and may be subject to change again. So whilst I've done a fair bit of research to show what order books are, just understand that it is subject to change. So in the video, we'll go talk about what order books are, a little bit how they're planned to work, and then I'll touch on rapid swaps, on how we're going to potentially combine streaming swaps with order books. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you're new here, and you can want to learn more about THORChain, you can check out my other videos here. Let's get started. So before we get onto order books, I just want to cover off a few things. So we have spot trading, and spot trading happens on the spot. So it's no futures or anything like that. And you have two types of main spot trading. You have market order, and that's where you buy or sell an asset at the current market price. And with your THORChain, it would be whatever the pool price is. Then there's a limit order, which would be new, and that's where you buy or sell an asset at a set or better price. Now, THORChain has no opinion on price. It only understands pool ratios. So it will get the USD to RUNE ratio in order to price RUNE, and then it will use that ratio in order to price all the other pools in USD. Specifically, so a user sells an amount of an asset X for an amount of asset Y at a ratio, and they're either going to be, that ratio is either going to be at the current market rate, or with limit orders, they can set a ratio where they want to have that ratio or better. We've got some expanded definitions here, but with the limit order, it's important to understand that the order would be executed only if the market reaches the pools within THORChain, the pool price within THORChain, reaches or surpasses the specified price or ratio. And we'll go through that in a sec. So as an overview for order books uses trade assets. It was originally designed to use synthetics, but now it will most likely use trade assets. That said, the design is subject to change. So I'm just going to go through how it currently sits today based off my research, but with a disclaimer, it may change or tweak later on. So order books will likely use trade assets, and see my video on trade assets to understand more about how they work. So as an example, I have a swapper here. They have 70,000 USDT and they want to buy Bitcoin. So they can set a limit order in to say, well, for my 70,000, I want to get at least one Bitcoin. In order to do that, they would send in their 70,000 of USDT that'll get converted to a trade asset, and that trade asset is held within the NASGuard module until that ratio is reached, or it can be executed. That swapper would get their 70,000 USDT, send it into THORChain, that is converted one-to-one to a trade asset. That asset sits in the Asgard module, and then that will be swapped when that ratio is reached. When that swap occurs, you'll be double swap, and then you'll have the trade asset of BTC that'll get converted one-to-one to L1 Bitcoin, and out it goes. So it's like a normal swap. Within trade assets, like a normal trade asset swap. However, this will be this testing of the ratio, and we'll explain how that's set in a minute. For swapping Bitcoin to Ethereum, it's pretty much the same thing. You send your Bitcoin in, just say you want to swap your Bitcoin to 20 Ethereum. You send it in, it gets converted, stays there, and this will wait until that ratio of 1 Bitcoin to 20 Ethereum has been reached, or you can get more than 20 Ethereum for 1 Bitcoin, and then it will create the trade asset here, doing a double swap across the pools, convert that to your native L1 Ethereum, and send it out. So that's kind of like the mechanics. Let's just go through more detail on how to set this ratio. So we have use case number one. We want to buy one whole Bitcoin, when the price hits 70,000. So for some reason you want to wait for the price to go up and then buy your Bitcoin. Let's just go with the example. So we would send our 70,000 of USDT and saying buy at least one Bitcoin. So we would send this in, and within the memo, we would say, this is the lim part of the memo, give us at least 1 Bitcoin here. So we're setting this ratio between the inbound amount and the requested outbound amount within the memo. And that gives us a ratio then of 70,000 to 1. The memo would look like this. So it would have a prefix here of limit order. Give me at least this amount of Bitcoin and send it to this address. And this is the streaming swap part. Now this may look familiar because it's essentially a swap memo. In fact, it is a swap memo with a different prefix. And this then sets the order type within the backend, whether it's a market order or limit order. To expand upon this, you don't need to send like a whole Bitcoin in because not many people are going to do that. You can, if you were to send in 35,000 and then ask for half a Bitcoin, it's the same ratio. If you send in $2,000 worth of, or 2,000 worth of USDT and you request this amount of Bitcoin, it's still the same ratio. And you would do that by sending this amount of USDT, noting that this is all 1E8. So it's essentially the amount with 8 zeros at the end. So then when you have a look from here to here, you're going to get the same 70,000 to 1 ratio. To change the ratio, you would just change the input amount, or you would change the desired output amount here, and then that would start changing the ratio between the assets to whatever you desire. Looking at our second use case, which is going from Bitcoin to Ethereum, we want to sell our 1 Bitcoin or trade our 1 Bitcoin for at least 20 Ethereum. So when we do this, we'd send our 1 Bitcoin, which is in 1E8 format, and say, give us Ethereum, but we want at least 20 of it. So you can see between this part here and this part here, we're setting our ratio of 1 to 20. This memo is pretty much a swap memo, just with the same prefix. If you were to do this as a market buy or market order equivalent, it would just look like this. Except that, as if this wasn't achievable, it would be refunded, whereas with limit orders, it would sit and wait inside of here until that ratio is achieved. To continue our example, to pick at this amount, to get this amount of Bitcoin, which is about 0.28, worth of Bitcoin to this amount of Ethereum would have the same ratio of 1 to 20. And this is where interfaces would work it out for users to say, oh, this is the ratio you want to achieve, how much you want to put in, we'll give you how much you're going to, or the minimum you're going to have to get out. So in order to swap that, you would send this amount of Bitcoin and request that amount of Ethereum, because at that ratio, that amount of Bitcoin will give you this amount of Ethereum, and then that's what your memo would look like. So that is how, with limit orders, you can set the ratio, and then how much you get out of that ratio would be dependent on how much you put in. And to change the ratio that you desire, obviously you're going to be changing the input and the output amount. And all that complexity would hopefully be sorted out by user interfaces. So just some other points. These limit orders are for the input amount buys at least the requested output asset. So this Bitcoin buys at least this amount of Ethereum. It's not a stop loss or a stop order or anything like that. It's a simple, this amount buys at least this particular asset. Plan that users will be able to view their open orders via an endpoint, and then users can cancel an order using a message deposit with the memo here. So order minus, and then it will be the input transaction for the transaction where they sent the limit order that had this memo in it. Lastly, as I said before, the design is subject to change. So that's the ratio part, and how to set that ratio on setting the memo in order to get, based off the input, to get a certain amount of output out. Now I want to go through the swapping process and how these limit orders are processed within the overall swapping process. So within THORChain, there's a whole swapping process. I'm just going to quickly go over it and we can understand where limit orders fit in. So THORChain has many blocks and executes stuff within these blocks. Each block is approximately 6 seconds in duration. When these swaps come in, THORChain observes them, and then they're added to a swap queue as they come in. They're not executed immediately. So this swap queue fills up as the block duration goes on, and then at the end of the block, there's a function called endBlock. Surprise, surprise. And then that will take that queue and sort it in a specific way based on the slip fee, liquidity fee, and that type of thing. It's a set way of sorting it. So now we have our ordered queue. Each swap within the queue is going to get processed. It's going to get processed like any normal queue. The front of the queue gets processed first, and then the last one will get processed last. So each swap gets processed, and when that happens, the pool depth starts to change and maneuver depending on the swap direction. So this will start to update or change the liquidity pool depths. Within the swap queue processing, all the L1 synths and trade accounts, as I understand it, they're all ordered in the same way, and then they get executed depending on that criteria. So the normal swaps are executed first, and then what's going to happen is the limit orders are going to get tested. Because obviously the pool ratios have changed here, the pool prices have changed. Now we can go ahead and look at the limit orders. There's a nice little graph that I got off the issue that probably can explain this process a bit better. So once all the normal swaps have been executed, and obviously that gives an updated pool balance, then you go ahead and test these order books, and you would say, well basically, if we were to swap this without fees, would the swap be possible? If it's not, we'll skip it, move on, and test it in the next block. If so, then we'll test this with fees. So would the swap with the slip fee as well as the outbound fee and stuff like that, would that be able to be done? If the answer is no, okay, skip that, test it next time. If the answer is yes, then that gets added to the swap queue. So the swap queue, having been emptied because all this was executed, will now have the limit order put into it. Once all the limit orders have been checked, then any limit orders that have turned into swaps get executed. So in a way, the swap queue then iterates. It goes through the normal ones, we'll test the limit orders, and then any limit orders that can go as swaps go into here, and then that gets executed and again until there are no more swaps to execute. Then the block's completed, and you start the process again. You go on to the next block, and then swaps come in, they get added to the queue, and the same process repeats. This process is a bit low level, but it's important to understand when we talk about rapid swaps. So that's order books. Now let's have a quick look at rapid swaps. So before we talk about rapid swaps, I'm just going to touch briefly on streaming swaps. I have a video on it, and part 3 of my tour of THORChain will go into more detail. But very quickly, we take a big trade and we break it up over time. And instead of it all being executed in one block, we execute it over several blocks because it's more price efficient. That allows the pools to be rebalanced, so you're not moving the pool out of balance so much, which means overall you pay less of a slip fee. Another way of putting it is it's more capital efficient. So now we can talk about rapid swaps, which is combining streaming swaps or normal trades with limit orders. I'm going to keep this high level because there's a lot of detail still to be worked out, but I'm hoping you'll be able to understand the concept of rapid swaps. So within a block, like with streaming swaps, we normally would break up a trade over multiple blocks. But if you've got limit orders at a certain price point or a certain ratio or a certain point in the XYK curve, the limit order can essentially arb the trade. It can play the arb in the subsequent block, but it can happen inside of this block. And the limit order can either be a normal limit order that a normal person wants, or it could be an arbitrager who's put the limit order in there expecting the pool price to move in that particular direction, so they can automatically arb it and make a profit. So this then allows the pool price or the pool ratio essentially to stay in the same position as these trades are moving on, because you're going to have a trade that moves it in one way and the arb that moves the pool back in the other way, and so on and so forth. So then you can have a very large trade that's been executed in one block, and you're not needing these subsequent blocks for arbing like just with normal streaming swaps. The swap ordering here would be the normal swaps as we talked about before get executed. then the limit order swaps get tested, and what can get executed will get executed, and then it loops and it just continues round. There might be a few changes within the swap ordering to facilitate what I'm talking about here, but again, that's more details yet to come out. And then from what I understand from Chad is once all of this is done, normal swaps limit ordering is completed, then that's when the derived assets happen, the lending assets get swapped. So this should result in less transactions because you can have the ARBs as limit orders already in place and not having to be sent in response to pool movements. It can increase the swap fees because more swaps will happen inside of one block, noting that their swaps are limited to 100 swaps per block, but that's easily changed. And then most importantly, this will result in large swaps being able to be executed potentially in one block. Now, this does require limit orders to be at that price point or near that price. If there's a large swap, say someone swaps 50 Bitcoin to RUNE instantly without streaming swaps, moves the pool, then maybe there are no limit orders around at that point, in which case normal ARBs and normal streaming swaps and all that type of thing would need to come in until there's a price point where the limit orders are, and then that's when rapid swaps can start to come into effect. I hope that gives you a better understanding. My understanding is pretty much everything I've given you right now, so it'll be great to see when limit orders is implemented to get more detail around limit orders and around how rapid swaps will be working in with limit orders. For more information on order books, you can have a look at the issue here that goes through a bit of information, as well as one of the merge requests that has all the code and that type of thing. So that's the video. We've covered limit orders in quite a bit of detail. We've covered rapid swaps. I hope you found that useful. Let me know in the comment section below what your thoughts are. Don't forget to like the video if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe to the channel to see more content like this. Check out my other videos on THORChain. Thanks for watching. Until next time, bye.